Neighbours on BBC One in 40 minutes, but first, through the eyes of celebrities, a look back at children's programmes, including the announcement of your all-time favourite.
Are you sitting comfortably? Because I'm going to show you some of your favourite children's programmes. I know what mine is, but what's yours?
Vision on The Wooden Tops.
Jack and Ollie.
Blue Peter.
Doctor Who.
The Clangers.
Watch with Mother.
Record Breaker.
The Magic Roundabout. Mr Bean. Play School.
Biker Grave.
Grange Hill.
The Teletubbies.
Multicolour Swap Shop.
Muffin the Mule.
Gareth, do you like Muffin the Mule?
There you are. Look at his name. Isn't it grand? So, you're going to prance over to France. I think that's a song. Are you ready? I've got the chance to prance over.
Muffin the Mule and Annette Mills is what I remember, and to this day I can see her leaning on that piano. It says a lot, I suppose, for her ability to actually entertain. That although you're watching television, very little was happening. She had you riveted on this sort of this little puppet that clanked around.
I think we should talk about Watch with Mother now, because I remember very clearly Watch with Mother.
I remember Watch with Mother at lunch times, which I did watch with Mother.
Monday was a picture book.
Hello, children. Here's the picture book again. Are you ready to look at it?
Tuesday was always Andy Pandy.
Andy Pandy. It's not a flower at all. It's Teddy. Are you very wet, Teddy? Better have a good shake.
And, of course, Bill and Ben and Little Wee, Flobberdog.
Flobberlibblub.
Flobberdobbler.
Flubberlubberlubblub.
Oh, flobberbob-bob-kabot-to-plop.
Then they looked round for something to play with. And the first thing they saw was the paintbrush the man had left hanging on the nail.
Oh, lo. Lubber-lub-rub.
Friday was the best one. Friday, I think we both would agree, Wooden Tops.
It was pretty good.
The Wooden Tops, of course, with Spotty Dog.
And where's Spotty now? He seems to have gone again.
Oh, he's helping Sam. He'll be here in a minute. You know, he really is the most wonderful sheepdog. Oh, here he is now.
Clever Spotty. Isn't he the most wonderful dog in the whole world?
He certainly is.
Wooden Tops was fantastic because of one particular character, Spotty Dog, with his right leg and his right foot moving and left leg and left foot.
That's right.
Very rigid movements that they had.
Do you remember his one, he had the same line of dialogue every week? Do you remember what it was?
You never forget those things.
The Magic Roundabout, that was my most favourite children's programme of all time.
Florence came along. Hello, she said. You haven't seen it by any chance, have you? Said Mr. McHenry. Seen what? Said Florence. It's escaped, said Mr. McHenry. It's very worrying. Dougal was looking for something too. Now, where is it? He said. What? Said Florence. What's everyone looking for?
I might be sitting there at 6 reading stories about a terrible train crash, a loss of life, a political scandal, an economic crisis, some kind of disaster somewhere in the world. But somehow you knew if you just cast your mind back about 5 or 10 minutes to before the 6 o'clock news, and you thought about Dougal and Brian the Snail and Ermintrude the Cow and Florence and Zebedee saying,
Time for bed, then.
Then you knew that, really, everything was still all right with the world.
When I was a little girl, and this is really true, when Zebedee said it's time for bed, we went to bed.
I loved the Clangers.
That is a clanger. And that is another clanger. They seem to have a piece of rope.
They're such delightful little people. You can really understand what they're saying.
That's how they went, wasn't it?
I can't remember.
I particularly like the Soup Dragon.
You sit and watch it, and it told a whole story without saying a single word, virtually. I understood everything that the clanger said, and it didn't harm me one bit.
Long may they go on exploring space. There's nothing like them. Long live the clangers.
Trompton Fire Station. Captain Flack here. A fire? A real fire? Oh, a bonfire. Still, you never know, it might get out of hand. Yes, your worship will be there at once.
Pew, pew, Barney McGrew, Cuthbert Dibble and Grubb, and they all came down the little fireman's pole and trotted along like little soldiers.
All the stories and sang all the songs for Trompton.
It really doesn't matter if it's raining or it's fine.
Just as long as you've got time to play, play away, way.
Play away, play away, play away, play away, play away.
Play away!
Nobody teaches Hopalong a lesson.
Well, I sure plan to.
Uh-huh.
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 And just what lesson are you planning to teach me, Blue Peter?
I'm planning to teach you how to make this really useful holster out of an old washing bottle, some sticky back plastic and an old belt.
Play school, I remember, and I associate that with sickness, because if you were sick, I think it was on about 11 o'clock. You got to watch it, you know, if you had tonsillitis or whatever. So I remember that, just being a wee bit older and thinking, oh, I can watch preschool through the round window.
A house with a door.
Windows,
two, three, four.
Ready to play?
What's the day? Da-da-da-da-da. It's Friday.
Quack, quack. Quack, quack, quack.
But apparently, I used to watch Play School, and Dad would come on, and I used to get quite infuriated that he couldn't hear me or wouldn't answer me, and I'd sit there going, wah, 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 and he'd ignore me. Or then he'd walk in the room, and I'd sort of do a double take and go, 2 daddies, cool.
That was
but
the first time.
I don't really remember.
I remember that the first time, and you went, 2 daddies, and then you went...
Humpty wants to sing a song now, don't you? Which song? Oh, you might know. Which song does Humpty sing? Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. Doesn't get hurt, you know, he likes falling off.
I think the most embarrassing one is when you took us into, it was either Swap Shop or it was Superstore, wasn't it?
It was Superstore, and I didn't know what was going on. And I was being interviewed by Mike Reed, I think it was.
What? I forgot, it's my little lad's birthday. He's up here. Can we have a look? It's Dan.
And they pointed at Dan, and Dan's like waving like this, and then I just look like fat David Cassidy, and you just see me go bright red, and then the little boy falls off the step behind.
But I never knew anything about it.
Oh, that was so humiliating.
The funniest moments tend to be the ones that are not on air. And we were once rehearsing the bathing of Bonnie, because Bonnie, the dog, gets bathed once a year. And we had this big bath in the studio, so of course to rehearse it, we couldn't actually bath Bonnie. So we got the assistant floor manager, and we got him in that doggy position in the bath. And Diane and I bathed him, and somebody cruelly taped it. Oh, Lord, they don't normally be in the water. I recommend one for you. Don't forget, in between their legs.
Hello, to the shoe. Welcome.
I've always been a great fan of Basil Brush. I love him, but at the same time I remember interviewing him on radio, and the person that plays Basil Brush insisted on actually sort of putting the puppet on his end of his hand. Halfway through the interview, for some unexplainable reason, the puppet lunged at me and bit me on the finger and drew blood. And about 4 days later, my finger went septic. Now, can you imagine going to the doctor and saying, can I have something done about this? And he put me on antibiotics, and he said, how did you do that? And I said, I was bitten by Basil Brush.
Did you hear about the sailor who was only 3 feet tall?
Who was that?
Half Nelson.
Over the last 35 years, how many Doctor Who's have there been?
The thing I remember more than anything is Doctor Who. Perhaps it's my scientific background. I just wish I had a TARDIS now, because I could use it and get the forecast right every day.
Dad used to bring us into the BBC to kind of look around, and I remember being bullied at school because I said that I'd seen inside the TARDIS and that it wasn't real at all, and everyone hated me for ages after that.
So scary. Behind the sofa time.
Well, no, the Daleks you could relate to, they were just like dustbins with a sink plunger on top. But it was some of the other ones that actually did get very scary.
I found the Cybermen much more scary. And then, of course, years later, I was actually killed by a Cyberman. That was an ambition of mine, to actually read a story on Jackanory. So when then, 100 years later, I was asked to do 101 Dalmatians, I mean, that was a dream come true.
Then he shut the cupboard door in Cruella's face, and Nanny Butler firmly showed her out of the house. The Dearleys stayed with Mrs. and the puppies until they were born, one after the other, until they were 11.
Jackanory, I remember Jackanory always was my mother always made time to watch Jackanory.
I want to tell you about an emperor of long, long ago who loved pancakes.
This story may have happened a long time ago, or perhaps it hasn't even happened yet.
Well, that's the legend. What happened, though?
Pass that tin of baked beans, will you, dear? asked Dad.
How fortunate. Quick, Lotta, slip it on and be off.
Keeping near the hedge, he made for Leathorpe Manor.
The girls were both pretty, but as different in character as night from day.
Both of them got eaten up, in full daylight, mind you, and on a crowded street, by an enormous, angry rhinoceros.
The one I have the earliest memory of is Crackerjack.
I remember Crackerjack very well.
I remember on a Friday, it was the end of the week, you could just throw your school tie off, and there's a programme called Crackerjack.
All week, you had quite a lot of worthy programming. Suddenly,
it's Friday.
It's 5 to 5.
And it's Crackerjack!
You had Eamon Andrews asking questions and making children stand on little plinths and giving them armloads of toys and cabbages. It was very cruel to watch, but actually very funny as well.
Anyone know which play that is? The Merchant of Venice. Who was it in The Merchant of Venice? Portia, quite right, a cabbage. Wow, that puts you back in with a fighting chance. You've got 2 and she's got 1.
Peter Glaze was always the little tubby, dark-haired chap with the glasses who always appeared in the little sort of play at the end.
Will you be more careful and watch what you... Get out! Don't hit me! Don't! Just a minute! Give me that back!
And they'd always be running up and down ladders and the music would be very fast and probably their trousers would fall down and you'd laugh and laugh and it'd be brilliant.
I wish I could be in that audience, and I wish I could be one of those people who gets a cabbage to take home and a Crackerjack pencil.
Here, for the rest of you, are your Crackerjack pencils.
Crackerjack. Great stuff.
Would you sit down over there for now?
Well, Mr. Mitchell, all present and correct. Ready to start their new lives at Grange Hill.
I was actually a teacher at the time that Grange Hill was on, and it was a touchstone between the pupils and the staff. I remember at a school we both taught at for one term. I went to the pub and all the staff were talking about Grange Hill, and you'd go into school the next morning and all the kids were talking Grange Hill. It was something you had in common, and I think it was felt, certainly in the early days of it, that it was very accurate.
Give yourselves little with us, we'll have a race.
We were being pretty naughty, I think, and we threw all the benches into the water, and we were having a race. I think it was Tucker and Benny and Big Al, and just the thought of being able to do that and get away with it was great, you know.
What happened?
What's going on?
Jenkins? Oh, I think I must be back, sir.
I always had a thing for Tucker Jenkins because he had this, what can I tell you, a cheeky grin, a saucy smile. The way he carried his school bag with this kind of nonchalant bravado just went straight to my heart. I've had a thing for him ever since.
I was in love with Tucker Jenkins.
totally in love. I knew that he was going to be my boyfriend. There were no two ways about it. And I loved Tucker. I had a big pash for Tucker, and then when they brought out Tucker's lot, it was like, wow, brilliant.
Bit gullible, wasn't she?
Children's BBC have always had the most superior quality of programmes. My favourite to this day is still Byker Road.
Sunday afternoons, rich children's drama. We must never lose that.
Yes, God.
You have given me Narnia forever! You have lost your own life, and you have not saved his. In that knowledge, Aslan, despair, and
What do you mean, trouble?
Very serious trouble.
Come on, it's only a flag.
It's not only a flag, Jeff. Neil Armstrong put that flag on the moon. If the Americans ever find out we took it...
Nobody's going to find out, are they? They can't.
There's these two young kids zooming around in this thing, having a whale of a time. I mean, that beats flying on an airline, doesn't it? Let's be honest, if you can get in your own spaceship. Microsoap is fab.
Okay, 4 big things. Jim has a girlfriend, so my life stinks at the moment, but the less said about that, the better. 2. Mum's boyfriend Roger sold his house and bought the Mullets place next door. Which was my idea. Which was Joe's idea, so now Mum and Roger can be together as much as they want.
There's lots of things in there that are like real life. You know, there are kids out there who are going through that experience.
Which mystical character lived at 52 Festive Road?
Mr. Ben, of course, a perennial classic.
He used to come into the shop and he used to go into the changing room and he'd go into all the different worlds.
Quickly, he changed into the armour. Then he noticed another door. Well, said Mr. Ben, and he walked through the second doorway. Instead of another room, Mr. Ben found himself in rocky countryside.
I always used to like the way in which he used to find something. When he went away, of course, on his travels, he used to find something that reminded him of where he'd been.
When he went to get his front door key out, he found an unusual box of matches in his pocket. He smiled at the picture on the box. How nice, he thought.
Mr. Bain and Bagpuss, I liked them because they were kind of magical and unreal. I liked the wee mice and Bagpuss that would find something and they would make it into something. Bagpuss! I loved Bagpuss.
And Bagpuss was wide awake. And when Bagpuss wakes up, all his friends wake up too. The mice on the mouse organ woke up and stretched.
Wee-wee, fix it! Wee-wee, fix it! Wee-wee, fix it! That's the mice, they did that.
This is the home of the Wombles.
The thing about the Wombles, of course, was that they were hugely ecologically sound because they were making good use of the things that they find, the things that the everyday folks leave behind.
Tomsk, Wellington, and Bungo are ready to start work. And here's Great Uncle Bulgaria. Where is Orinoco?
Mary, Mungo and Midge. What can I say about that? A true classic.
There's Mary. There's Mungo. And there's Midge.
When my
uncle used to have a lift in his in the block where he used to live, and I used to often try and stand on my sister, like when Mary Mungo used to stand on each other so they could reach the button on the top lift.
Don't be long, boys.
Rhubarb and custard. Whatever happened to rhubarb and custard? Bring them back. They were fab.
Who designed the Blue Peter ship?
And now, in true Blue Peter style, let me show you one that I did earlier. That is the original Blue Peter ship, which I drew in 1963.
Vision On was a big part of my life when I was growing up. Tony Hart was like my idol, an unlikely idol, I have to admit.
They always say to me, I can't draw. Well, everybody can draw, as a matter of fact, and I can teach them up to a certain point.
He brought out some kind of artistry in me that I didn't realise was there, some kind of talent. I eventually went to art school in the end. I loved everything he did. He seemed to just do it effortlessly.
They had the sense to say, well, I can't do it as he did it, but I will do it my way. And they did. And they'd send them in, for heaven's sake, so that we could put them in the gallery. One time, I had something rather like a tennis court marker. It was an old oil drum, and it was filled with sort of white paint stuff that eased itself out. And I used to walk round like an idiot, pushing this thing, hardly knowing what on earth I was doing. It probably took something like between 10 and 15 minutes actually to do it, but they always speeded it up when it went out to bring it down to 4 minutes, which was quite enough. Then Blue Peter came along, and I always thought that deserved to be the flagship of children's television.
My favourite programme still exists today. It's Blue Peter. It was just well presented, well thought out, well planned programme, and still is to this day. I still watch it with my boys.
I wonder if you can guess what this is. We always needed sticky back plastic and cardboard tubes. I think every parent is really annoyed with Blue Peter because everyone was like, have you got this? Have you got a cardboard box? Can we make this?
I made all the advent calendars with the wire coat hangers and the tinsel wrapped around it, hanging upside down, and it looked terrible, nothing like they did it.
It's time to go where many Blue Peter presenters have gone before and light the third candle on our advent crowd.
The one attempt we had at making the little advent candelabra thing, well, that went up in a puff of smoke, so I gave up with that entirely.
These middle-class people are actually using stuff that I'd throw in the bin. So that really confused me. Middle-class people go through their bin and go, look, a Christmas decoration.
I think the worst moment for me that ever happened on children's television was when the Blue Peter garden was vandalised, because, you know, we had lived through every inch of that garden. I mean, Percy Thrower had taken us through it leaf by leaf and shoot by shoot.
We've got some rather bad news, I'm afraid, because we discovered this morning that over the weekend vandals broke into the Blue Peter garden and caused rather a lot of damage.
There was this horrible, ravaged, destroyed garden. It was a horrible wasteland, and the idea that, you know, anyone would go and do something that horrible to your cherished Blue Peter world suddenly made you feel terribly vulnerable.
Who's Shep's best friend?
For
For me, probably the most memorable thing that ever happened to me in children's television was the day I left Live and Kicking.
Laura, what's your question? What will you miss most about Live and Kicking?
Emma. Oh. And I burst out crying, she burst out crying, and for the next 12 minutes, we just all cried, we just all sobbed. Even the PA, Amanda, in my ear, I can distinctly remember her going, 4 minutes! I just want to say thank you to everyone. I can't do it.
No, don't worry.
The saddest moment for me, I think, was when Petra died.
Hello. Hello. And I'm afraid that today we're starting Blue Peter with something very sad indeed, because as I'm sure you must have seen in the newspapers or heard on the radio and television news, yesterday, poor old Petra died.
I didn't have a dog at the time, and I always wanted a dog. And I had a picture of Petra by the side of my bed, and I used to watch it was on Mondays at the time, just to see Petra. And when they announced that Petra's died, I mean, that was awful.
If you're the tallest, the smallest, if you beat them all, if you're...
I used to like Roy Castle. I thought he was a great man. He does a lot of, obviously he's dead now, but he did a lot of good for a great charity. So I used to like that. I couldn't watch much in the morning because I was football commitments, but I think that was my favourite programme.
Hello? Hello? Are you part of the biggest tap dancing troupe in the whole world?
Yes, I am.
Pardon me asking, but where are the other 499?
Right here.
BBC One now, it's time for John Craven's News Round.
Hello, and there's good news tonight for Tom and Jerry fans. Today, fighting broke out again in Beirut, and a major campaign to ban lead in petrol was launched today.
I did over 3,000 editions of News Round, and in that time we got some pretty good scoops, much to the annoyance of the grown-up news.
Newsround packages things up and gives you the main points, the things you really need to know about the news of the day.
The animals battling to survive India's floods.
That's a fine institution of a programme. News for kids, you can sit down, you don't feel patronised, but you can understand completely what's going on.
Johnny Morris?
Animal World.
Animal World, Johnny Morris.
Magic.
Animal Magic. Animal Magic.
I have very fond memories, particularly of Animal Magic, which was one of my favourite shows. In fact, I think for a long time it affected my development. I still think that, you know, llamas could talk.
One thing about dolphins, they're always ready for a bit of fun, especially if they think they've got someone easy to have a bit of fun with. Yeah. Oh, come on, Tony, help me to get the rest of this cover on.
Johnny is so good. He's a natural broadcaster. He's a fund of information about his subject, and he gets on so well with all the animals. And I can remember one particular programme in which I think it was an orangutan had recently given birth.
Is that all right for you? Yeah. How's the little one? Mm-hmm. Look, don't you think you ought to support his head like this?
Look, if you're so blinking clever, you nurse him. Go on, there. Go on, get on with it. Some people think they know the lot.
He's very nice, isn't he?
Of course he's very nice.
And I thought, what confidence between a human and an animal for a mother to hand her baby over to Johnny.
Hello, Warren.
Hello?
Good morning. What can I do for you?
How's that plug swap, please?
You're a swapper as well.
Noel Edmonds taught me an awful lot about television because when we started Swap Shop in 1976, it was totally revolutionary.
Swap Shop changed people's attitude to television.
I think we've caught him out, whatever he's doing.
Nobody had ever done a programme that didn't have a script.
Love it, love it, love it.
The day I watched Multicolour Swap Shop on television was the day I decided that was all I wanted to do in my life. The fact that you could go in and show your swaps or your hobbies, or the fact that you could phone them and they could phone you, and that was just the most fantastic thing to watch.
When I was 15 or 16, I wrote to Philip Schofield and said, are Children's BBC looking for any new presenters? And he sent me back a signed picture. So I sent the signed picture back and wrote back and said, I didn't ask you for a signed picture. I asked you, does Children's BBC need a new presenter? And he wrote back on the back of a signed picture this time, saying, no, they don't. Good luck in your quest to become a presenter. Little did he know that 2.5 years after that, I would take over from him.
Hello, it's 9 o'clock and you're watching BBC One for the very first edition of Live and Kicking! Woo!
Thatcher came into to Going Live on occasions. I think the first time she came to Saturday Superstore, and she thought it was a shop, and she brought her shopping basket with her.
No idea.
Hello?
Hello, Alison.
Hello. In the event of a nuclear war, where will you be?
Oh, my goodness me. I should be in London.
Oh, don't you have your own bunker or something?
Look, dear, let me again point out.
She can't be rude to the children, and they used to corner her on that programme, and it was just great television. Kids go straight there. Give me the answer.
What's the Teletubbies vacuum cleaner called?
Time for Teletubbies. Time for Teletubbies. Time for Teletubbies. Time for Teletubbies. Tinky Winky.
Tinky Winky.
Dipsy. La La.
La la.
Po.
I've seen the Teletubbies because I've got a 2-year-old son who absolutely adores the Teletubbies, and he's got all the dolls and all that kind of thing. And I say thank God for the Teletubbies because he eats when he's watching Teletubbies. He sort of chills out when he's watching Teletubbies. So good on you, Po and Lala and Dipsy and the rest of you.
Again.
I think the Teletubbies are great, and I think it teaches kids about all sorts of things. It's great fun, it's colourful, and it widens the imagination.
The feelings you get from the Teletubbies is that there's something rather soft and comforting. Probably I'm missing the message somewhere, but that's what it seemed to be.
I was one of those people when Teletubbies started, and I thought, what educational value can the Teletubbies have? I just really can't understand what they're saying. And I said to my wife, I said, you know what, I'm not sure this is good for her. For my youngest, Ruby, I said, I'm not sure this is good for her at all. It's not teaching her anything at all. And Steph said, what were you brought up on? So I said, well, Bill and Ben. She said, could you understand them? So I said, no. Well, she said, well, there you are. Did it do you any harm? So I said, no. And of course, that's what it's there for. Teletubbies is the now 20th century, 21st century, Bill and Ben, and kids love it.
My favourite programme is Blue Peter. We asked you to vote for your favourite BBC children's programmes. And the winner is Bagpuss. Here are some clips.
Once upon a time, not so long ago, there was a little girl, and her name was Emily. And she had a shop. There it is. One day, Emily found a thing. and she brought it back to the shop and put it down in front of Bagpuss, who was in the shop window, fast asleep as usual. But then Emily said some magic words. Bagpuss, dear Bagpuss, old fat furry cat puss, wake up and look at this thing that I bring. Wake up, be bright, be golden and light. Bagpuss, oh hear what I sing. And Bagpuss was wide awake. And when Bagpuss wakes up, all his friends wake up too. The mice on the mouse organ woke up and stretched. Madeleine, the rag doll. Gabriel, the toad. Look. And last of all, Professor Yaffle, who was a very distinguished old woodpecker. He climbed down off his bookend and went to see what it was that Emily had brought.
The marvelous mechanical mouse organ.
Bagpuss gave a big yawn and settled down to sleep. And of course, when Bagpuss goes to sleep, all his friends go to sleep too. The mice were ornaments on the mouse organ. Gabriel and Madeleine were just dolls. And Professor Yaffle was a carved wooden bookend in the shape of a woodpecker. Even Bagpuss himself, once he was asleep, was just an old, saggy cloth cat. Baggy and a bit loose at the seams. But Emily loved him.
Carl comes home, but how will Libby behave? Neighbours next here on BBC One.